Joining us now on the news line is Frank-Guinta, the former Republican congressman and former mayor of Manchester, New Hampshire. He's running to regain the seat that he took from Carol Shea Porter in 2010 and lost in 2012. Frank, thanks for being with us here on the Howie Carr Show.
Howie, it's my pleasure to be back.
Listen, what do you make of this Internal Revenue Service scandal? There's going to be hearings tomorrow in the House on this. I mean, are you buying any of this from the Obama administration?
No, I'm not. I think there's really, first, Howie, a lack of confidence that the country has in the IRS, and that has to be repaired. But secondly, it really appears as if the losing their emails, throwing the computer away. I've never seen this happen, in any other business or any other entity. I mean, I still have the computer, the same computer that I've used for the last 10 or 12 years. I just keep, improving it and upgrading it, and I find it hard to believe that with this one individual, with all of the email back and forth that has allegedly occurred, between her and possibly the administration.
Right. And this is a woman who visited the White House a number of times, and the commissioner of the IRS visited the White House even more.
Yeah, there was direct communication going on with Lois Lerner and the White House, and I think it's sad, the sad commentary on this administration and how they're conducting themselves. Look, I think people in this country, Howie, would appreciate if the president came out and said, what was done was wrong, we're going to deal with this, she's fired, and we're going to deal with this criminally. If he took a leadership role, I think a lot of the country would at least appreciate.
Number one, Frank-Guinta, number one, she did not get fired. She retired, as you know, which means she's getting a pension. And number two, the president told Bill O'Reilly on Super Bowl Sunday that there was not a smidgen of corruption in the Internal Revenue Service.
Which really doesn't pass the smell test. I mean, most people know that there is something going on that is unethical, inappropriate, possibly illegal. That's the reason that you have hearings, so we can have a balanced approach relative to how this administration is conducting itself. But again, I think a lot of the country would have supported the president just coming out and admitting it. There was a mistake. I take full responsibility. We're going to fire Lois Lerner. She's going to be dealt with criminally, and we'll do everything we can to make sure this didn't happen again.
But instead, Frank, they doubled down. Now they're saying they've lost 6 other people's emails. I mean, again, they have zero credibility at this point.
Well, and you're seeing that in national polls, that people just don't support this president. Whether you're Republican, Independent, or Democrat, you don't support this president anymore for this very reason. And he's got 2 more years in his term to lead the nation. So, when you have, at this point, 2/3 of the country doesn't support you, that hopefully will send a strong message in November to get rid of people like Carol Shea Porter, who support this president, who support Nancy Pelosi, lock, stock, and barrel.
I mean, you saw I'm sure you've seen the poll by now. We had Dave Paleologos on, the guy who did the Suffolk Boston Herald poll of New Hampshire voters. I don't get it. The president has a 52% unfavorable rating in New Hampshire, and yet Jean Shaheen still has a 52% favorable rating when she does everything that he tells her to do, and ditto Carol Shea Porter.
Well, Carol Shea Porter's numbers are a little bit, different than Jean Shaheen, and I'll just focus on Carol Shea Porter for the moment.
Yeah,
that's the person.
Your opponent. Yeah.
The reality is that Carol Shea Porter is doubling down on Obamacare. She has said, if you like your doctor, you can keep it. That is false. She has said that your insurance rates are going to go down. That's false. She has said that you're going to have greater access. We've lost 10 of the 26 hospitals in New Hampshire in this new exchange. That is false. She's doubled down on that, number one. Number two, she has done nothing constructive to support the middle class, whether it's restricting government's intervention in business or whether it's through tax reform. So she is out of step with New Hampshire families relative to the middle class. And third, and most importantly, Howie, when she comes back to the state, She refuses to hold town hall meetings, doesn't make herself publicly available to her constituents, which, as you know, is critically important in the state of New Hampshire.
Right.
So I think at the end of this cycle, you will see on Election Day people resoundingly saying, we've had enough of you, Carol Shea Porter. We want, someone who we respect, someone who's dignified, someone who's going to lead in a way that represents a good reflection of the 1st Congressional District, and that's why I think we'll be successful in November.
Now, I just read a letter that the governor's staff has sent to the Republicans down here at the State House in Boston, saying that, yes, there have been ice planes landing at Hanscom Field and Logan Airport, but they're not dropping off any unaccompanied minor children. I'm not sure how believable that is. But, I mean, again, this is a big problem, not just for the border states, but also for states on the other border, like New Hampshire. I mean, this illegal alien situation is out of control, especially since the borders have been basically opened to everyone that wants to come across. And Carol Shea Porter, again, is a big supporter. We can just bring in everybody from the third world and put them on welfare, apparently.
Howie, there's a few things that we can do. First, when I was in Congress, I co-sponsored the HALT Act, which essentially said this administration cannot issue, de facto amnesty through executive action without going through congressional legislative approval. So, number one, we have to restrict this president's ability to usurp laws. So I was a co-sponsor of that, and I would like to see that pass in this Congress, but it won't go through Harry Reid and Harry Reid's Senate. Number two, there are studies that show illegal immigration is going to cost our country over time $6.3 trillion with a T, $6.3 trillion. I don't think when in the context of owing $18 trillion in debt, we want to add another third of debt just because of illegal immigration. And third, you're right, this is not just a southern border issue. From October to May, you've had 162,000 people come across the southern border that are not from Mexico. This is a problem beyond the country of Mexico. This is a problem all over our country, and we've got to deal with it in a constructive, rational.
And now we hear that some of the people who were there in Iraq when they shut down the prison where the head of this terrorist group ISIS was, that he said to the Americans as they let him out of prison, "I'll see you in New York."
Yeah, it's a problem that's not being realistically addressed by this president. We've got to modernize the process for legal immigration, the H-1B, the H-2B, the H-2A, the E-2 visas. All of that has to be modernized so we can address legal immigration, but then you've got to have a real serious solution to ensuring that our borders are strong, that we have no further illegal immigrants coming into this country, and even, believe it or not, the other day Hillary Clinton took the same position.
I know. I was shocked by that. You notice the mainstream media has kind of given it a total pass.
They have. And this was on CNN, her town hall with Amon Four. I listened to it. Even Hillary Clinton is saying, look, people who come across the southern border right now need to go back to be reunited with their families because we cannot take on this burden and responsibility. We're not equipped for it. So even someone like Hillary Clinton right now is more in step with our position, and it shows that the president is out of touch with America.
Why would you invite millions of people to come into the country who can't speak English, many of whom have diseases, many of whom are criminals, gang members, probably terrorists, who are just going to become wards of the state? It's insane unless you're trying to purposefully destabilize the country.
Well, and Howie, I would go back to, and I use this example all the time. We've got personal friends. The Pruna family lives in Manchester. They migrated to our country legally from Colombia. Spent 7 years becoming American citizens. Spent thousands and thousands of dollars. We were invited, my wife and I, to their naturalization ceremony, and it was a wonderful thing to see. I mean, we want to invite legal immigration as we've all, come to this country. That's very, very different than what's happening today. And what does it say to someone who came here legally that we're going to just allow someone who's here illegally amnesty?
It says you're a chump.
It just says we're not respecting our own laws, and I think that we should be enforcing our existing laws, be realistic about strengthening the borders, modernizing with our legal immigration system, and be honest with the country on the cost associated with illegal immigration. $6.3 trillion.
Has Carol Shea Porter? Has Carol Shea Porter said anything? Of course, it's hard to know if she's not holding town meetings.
Howard, she's not saying anything on any subject matter right now. It's very frustrating in New Hampshire when your member of Congress doesn't speak publicly on any issue that's topical. And again, look, you may disagree with somebody's position, but when you're a duly elected member of Congress, you have an obligation to publicly serve, to listen to your constituents, and give people your opinion on how you're going to vote on particular issues. Howie, she's doing none of it. She's hiding. I think this is a strategy because it appears that she's going to lose her seat. I'm going to work very hard to make sure I earn that opportunity to serve the first CD again of New Hampshire. But you can't find Carol anywhere publicly in the state of New Hampshire right now.
1-877-469-4322 if you want to talk to Frank-Guinta, the former congressman from the 1st District of New Hampshire, the Seacoast District, and also the former mayor of Manchester, New Hampshire. You're talking about this HALT Act, and it would have prohibited President Obama from issuing executive orders like
Correct.
The one that caused the border to be overrun. But you know what, Frank, he would, even if you had the HALT Act there, he wouldn't care about that. He'd just say, hey, what can I do? They're coming across the border, and this is a humanitarian crisis, and we owe it to everybody in the third world to take care of them. That's what he would. You think he would care if the HALT Act was in place?
Well, what I think as a legislator, it's our obligation when the president is usurping existing law that we act in a way that's commensurate and obligatory to the Constitution. So, unfortunately, the legislative body, Congress, is put in a situation where they've got to, by law, tell the president to follow the law. Now, I would say that's better than doing nothing. It brings attention to the fact that this president wants to usurp existing legislative authority with executive power. And it's not just in this area, Howie, that he usurps the legislative intent. I mean, just go look at the lack of notification, the 30-day requirement that he was supposed to give Congress in the prisoner exchange. He violated the law there. And we can't just
Well, he said there was a danger that he was going to die, and then of course that story is no longer operative, as Nixon's PR guy used to say, and that story was totally changed around. If you want to get on ask him 1-877-469-4322. I mean, this is the thing that gets me, Frank. I mean, he gets away with this. I mean, and again, ABC News tonight has still not reported on the missing emails. How do they get away with this? I'm a member of the media. It drives me crazy.
Well, they get away with it because their ratings are still significant enough for them that they're making money. But when you go ask people who were literally delivering the news 20, 30, 40 years ago, they're disgusted by how the media operates today. And what you want, Howie, is just the truth to be reported.
Right.
You don't want the commentary. I mean, we've got editorial writers for that. You've got editorial individuals in the media, but you want just somebody reporting the honest truth about what's going on in their government.
And like the IRS scandal. Let's take a call or two for you. Greg, you're next with Howie Carr and former congressman and future congressman, he hopes, Frank-Guinta. Go ahead, Greg.
Hi, thank you, Howie. Thank you, Congressman Guinta. Hey, I have a funny story about the missing in action with Carol Shea Porter. Back in her prior term, when they were trying to force through the health care reform, myself and some of my neighbors wanted to speak with her, so I called her office, asked if she was in town because Congress was in recess, and they wouldn't tell me. I said, is Carol Shea Porter having any town halls? No, she's not having any town halls. Well, can you tell me when she'd be in the office? Because some of my neighbors and I, who are constituents, would love to come down and speak with her about our concerns about the health care law and that they're proposing and other issues. And you know what the response was?
What?
We don't know her whereabouts. And I said, you
Call
don't know
the
her
police.
whereabouts?
Get file a missing persons report.
So this was
I was
from her.
watching an old James Cagney movie.
Bolo, be on the lookout for Carol Shea Porter. Thanks for the call, Greg. Dennis, you're next with Howie Carr and former Congressman Frank-Guinta. Go ahead, Dennis.
Howie, how you doing, Frank?
Good.
Good to hear from you. Hey, listen, do you have open primaries in New Hampshire? And also, is same-day registration a New Hampshire law or a federal mandate?
So we do not have open primaries in New Hampshire, but same-day registration is a state law. It's a law that's got to be changed.
I thought you guys were cracking down on that.
Well, not yet. I mean, we had on Election Day in 2012, 100,000 people register on Election Day. Now, some of that is legitimate and legal, but a lot of it you could argue is not. And just most recently, the Attorney General of New Hampshire just prosecuted a Massachusetts resident for voting in New Hampshire. But there are many more cases that the Attorney General's office needs to take up. And, you know, as you know, Harry, the Attorney General is appointed by the governor, not elected.
Right.
So as long as you have, you know, a legislative body or a governor that is in favor of same-day registration, you're not going to change this law.
How bad is that we have tighter voting laws than you do in New Hampshire? Frank, I got to hold you right there, but you're welcome anytime, and good luck in your campaign. I'm Howie Carr.